welcome to Capitol Hill. I'm Lyndall Curtis. The Prime Minister, a little less than a week into the job, will be in Indonesia tonight for talks with Indonesia's President. Before Mr Rudd left, he launched an intervention into the New South Wales Labor Party to end the taint of corruption that is part of the damage to the Labor brand in that state. He's got wider reform of the party in his sights as well. But as he left, there was a reminder of things that went wrong in his first stint in the job, with the Queensland coroner issuing a report into deaths under the home insulation program. Joining me tonight are Liberal MP Jane Prentice and Labor Parliamentary Secretary Matt Thistlethwaite. Welcome to you both.
G'day, Lyndall.
Hello, Lyndall. Hi, Matt.
We will go first to the Prime Minister's visit to Indonesia. He says it's about more than just people smuggling, although he's dampening expectations about outcomes.
It is therefore to look at the overall temperature and content of the Australia-Indonesia relationship. So don't hold your breath for some sort of bright and breezy announcement out of Jakarta this time tomorrow afternoon that everything's all fixed and back to normal.
When you go to Indonesia, you've got two tasks. Start the cattle boats, stop the people smuggling boats, and I fear Mr Rudd will fail at both of them.
Jane, both the Prime Minister and the new Immigration Minister, Tony Burke, have acknowledged that Labor made mistakes in its response to asylum seekers in not moving quickly enough to match the change in circumstances. Does your policy, in essence, risk making the same mistakes, that you're taking a policy that worked a decade ago and expecting it to work now?
Well, Lyndall, I think it will work, and it has worked in the past. The only mistake that has been made was that Kevin Rudd, when he was Prime Minister last time, unravelled John Howard's policy, and that's resulted in over 45,000 people being brought here by illegal people smugglers.
But can you really say something that worked in the early 2000s will work now when there are things that are different?
No, I don't think the circumstances are different. People are just as desperate, and illegal people smugglers are prepared to charge money to bring people here and endanger their lives. We've had hundreds of people's lives lost at sea as part of this, and I think the system before was working. It wasn't broken. The only person who broke it was Kevin Rudd when he was Prime Minister last time.
Matt, given the admission that mistakes have been made, is the way forward on this policy effectively to take an even tougher line on asylum seekers than has already been taken?
Well, the way forward on this policy, Lyndall, is regional cooperation, and that is why the Prime Minister is, as we speak, headed to Indonesia. That's the only way you're going to get a lasting solution to what is a very, very complex and difficult policy problem that changes not only on a yearly but probably a monthly and weekly basis. And the central aspect of the opposition's policy is to turn back the boats. But the Indonesian government have said, well, we won't cop that. We won't allow boats to be turned back and sent back to Indonesia. So for Jane to say that their policy will work is complete rubbish, because the central plank of it has been denied by the Indonesian government.
But Australia has been working for quite some time on the issue of regional cooperation, but it's the reality, isn't it, that it's seen as much more of a problem in Australia than it is in the region?
Well, no, it is a regional problem, because anyone that seeks to come here on a boat will generally come through Indonesia, will generally come through Malaysia. So the right approach is to be working with those nations to find a lasting solution to this problem. And that's the history of the way this government has attempted to deal with the issue, through cooperation, through regionalism, rather than a policy of really isolation, which says, no, we'll just turn the boats around and we think that will work. That's not going to provide a lasting solution to this very difficult, complex policy issue.
Jane, does the Coalition accept that there needs to be a regional element to any solution?
There definitely needs to be regional cooperation and understanding, but to have that you need regional trust. And the problem we've got is that we've broken relationships with Indonesia on a whole range of issues, and the Prime Minister Kevin Rudd admitted that he had more than the people smuggling issue to deal with, because this is a country under Julia Gillard that cut off the food supply to Indonesia, not by picking up the phone and discussing it with them, but by Indonesia reading it in the media. And so there's quite a lot of repair to be done to get trust back into the relationship, and only through that way can we get regional cooperation to resolve other issues as well.
We might move on now, because before he left, the Prime Minister gave the New South Wales branch of the Labor Party a month to put in place changes he's suggested aimed at curbing rampant factional control and abuse of power.
Something had to happen. There had to be a message sent to the community, to the party, that the kind of activities that have been highlighted in that independent commission against corruption inquiry in New South Wales can never be allowed to happen again as a party, and we need to put change to the party. And the quickest and simplest way to do that is for the New South Wales branch to have its powers be given to the federal branch, who can rewrite those rules.
Matt, it's quite a range of changes that the Prime Minister is demanding the New South Wales branch of the party make. You were General Secretary of the party for a couple of years. At a time, Eddie Obeid was in the Parliament, Ian MacDonald was Minister. There was a couple of leadership changes in the New South Wales party. Should changes have been made a lot earlier than now?
Well, this is the Prime Minister responding to the concerns of the community and indeed members of the Labor Party. These are positive reforms because they will create more transparency, more accountability and more democracy within the Labor Party, and that's something that I support, that's something that the members of the caucus support and the wider Labor Party. I think for the last 10 years really the Labor Party's been reforming and gradually becoming more open, transparent, democratic and accountable. But the Prime Minister's determined that it's the right time to make these changes, and full credit to him.
But is it aimed at stemming some of the damage that has been done to the Labor brand because of what has occurred in the New South Wales Labor Party?
This is all about Kevin Rudd and the Labor Party listening to the community. That's the reason why the Prime Minister has acted in the way he has in respect of the party rules and operation in New South Wales. For a long time the community's been saying that we want a more open, transparent and accountable Labor Party, and we're delivering that, and the Prime Minister's fully indicated that this is the right approach, and that's the approach that the Labor Party will take under his leadership.
Jane, party reform is often talked about on both sides of politics. New South Wales Labor has looked at things like introducing primaries for pre-selection. Is the Liberal Party also looking at ways to democratise its base?
Well, number one, Lyndall, the leader, Tony Abbott, would never get involved in party organisational matters. Now, I know Kevin Rudd is multidextrous and he feels he can be the national president as well as the Prime Minister, but that's not for politicians to be involved in the organisation. I find it amazing that Anthony Albanese is coming out and supporting Kevin Rudd, because it was he and Dougie Cameron who fought so hard to keep Ian Campbell in politics. And wasn't it... Ian MacDonald, sorry, and wasn't it the same group that Matt pushed you out of the way to put Garrett into Kingsford Smith the first time? I mean, are we going to see more captain's picks? Are we going to get other people like Trish Croshan pushed out? I just think that politicians should not be involved in the organisation of the party.
Matt, a quick response from you to that?
Well, again, this is the leader of the Labor Party listening to the community. The leader of the Labor Party saying this is the direction that I want the party that I lead to take, and that's a strong approach. It's a more open and accountable approach, and I think it'll actually attract more members to the Labor Party. And this is all about fighting the conservative forces in Australian politics. To do that, we need to be attractive to members of the community. We need to be able to give them their say when they join the Labor Party, and these reforms will do that.
We've got a couple of quick issues. We've got a couple of quick issues to finish with. Jane, first, Kevin Rudd has challenged Tony Abbott to some debates on areas that Mr Abbott himself has identified as crucial. Why won't Tony Abbott front up to debate the Prime Minister?
Well, Lyndall, number one, are we in election mode? Is there an election campaign? Have we got an election date?
Do we need an election for a debate to take place?
Well, If not, let's recall Parliament and get through some of the 113 bills we still haven't finalised. I mean, Tony Abbott's already produced our plan, and he's set out our policies. I haven't seen anything from Kevin Rudd or the Labor Party. So if Kevin Rudd thinks that Parliament's still running, we should come back to Parliament where we can debate, and some of the more than 100 bills that have yet to be decided, or we're in full campaign mode and let's bring it on. Let's set the date now.
Matt, is this just a tactic because Kevin Rudd thinks he can best Tony Abbott in a debate?
This is Tony Abbott cowering in a corner. Tony Abbott saying he'll only come back, only debate Kevin Rudd with the backing of the 70-odd members of his party hurling abuse across the parliamentary chamber. I mean, this is an election year. This is about the future of our nation. It's a contest of policies. And if the two leaders of the parties can't come together and contest those ideas in front of the Australian public, then my God, what sort of a democracy have we got here? The Leader of the Opposition won't debate the Prime Minister on policy one-to-one. Is he kidding?
We might just
policies, Matt?
We might just finish now on one other issue from the past. The Queensland coroner has today handed down a report into the deaths of 3 people who installed insulation under the Commonwealth's home insulation program. There are many findings, some of which are highly critical of actions of the Commonwealth Government. He ends by saying it's reasonable to conclude the dangers should have been foreseen and mitigated before 4 people died. Matt, this was a program in which mistakes were made, wasn't it?
Well, look, the important thing here is that the government's accepted all of the recommendations, and sincerest condolences and thoughts to those families who lost loved ones. These are tragedies. There's nothing short of that. Unfortunately, you can't change the past. If you could, we certainly would. But the government has accepted the recommendations of 3 inquiries now. There's 2, an ANAO inquiry, the National Audit Office, a housing industry inquiry, and now the coroner. We've accepted the recommendations. The important thing is, in the future, we're putting in place the measures to ensure that this doesn't happen again.
Jane, it's important, isn't it, to learn the lessons of what happened under the program, to make sure that the sorts of things that happened because the program was to be rolled out very quickly don't happen again.
Oh, that's absolutely crucial, Lyndall. I mean, it is reprehensible that the QBSA, the Queensland Building Services Authority, had multiple warnings to the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, which were ignored. I mean, to think that maybe we didn't have to lose those lives is quite tragic. And as Matt said, obviously our condolences and sympathies with the families. But this is just another example of the federal government under Labor rushing things through without taking their time to consider the implications and what's going to happen. And quite frankly, I believe trying to run a program like that nationally, it's never going to work, and this is why you get into trouble.
On that note, we'll have to end it there. Matt Thistlethwaite and Jane Prentice, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, Lyndall.
Thanks, Lyndall. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Jane.
And thank you for joining Capitol Hill. We will be back again tomorrow. Until then, good night.